Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a truly earth-shattering musicological discovery. Our very own label, Tinnitus Classics, presents the world premiere anywhere in the universe of a newly discovered piece by Handel, his Aire Musicke, part of the tetralogy of works that we know he wrote. There was water music, and there was the fireworks music, but there was also air music and earth music. And those, of course, are lost. And, the origins of the water music are kind of obscure, but the new discovery of the air music casts an entirely new light on how the water music and the fireworks music came to be written. Because Handel originally, you may recall, was employed in Hanover by George, the Elector of Hanover, who became King George I of England. And, when he actually came over, Handel was there first. And then King George asked Handel to write the water music for a barge excursion, down the River Thames. It was played on a boat while the king and his retinue were on another boat or boats, and lots of other people were on boats, and it was all done that way. But that was not the first work that Handel composed for a royal excursion. It turns out that when he was still in Germany, and when George was the Elector of Hanover, he wrote the Aire Musicke, or Luftmusik in German. It was to be performed in a series of hot air balloons, which really was kind of a daring escapade for the day because, as some of you may be aware, fire control technology was not exactly of the most sophisticated. Back in those days, the technology was in its infancy, and hot air ballooning was a new thing. And sending an orchestra up in a bunch of hot air balloons, when the king went up to survey his realm in his own hot air balloon, was a very radical thing to try to do. And as luck would have it, George did not go up in his hot air balloon. And that was probably a good thing, because apparently they all caught fire, and the whole thing just came crashing back down to earth, which explains why the Luftmusik, the air music, was never as popular as the water music. And Handel, of course, who was never one to waste a good thing, recycled some of the Luftmusik later on when he did the water music and the fireworks music. So it didn't exactly go to waste, but there was a lot of original music in the Luftmusik, which was considered lost. But it wasn't lost, and that's what's so fascinating about it. And my sources in Germany at the Halle Handel Ausgabe, the new Handel Critical Edition, report to me the following. Let me explain to you where this came from. The origins of the Luftmusik were mentioned in the Jahrbuch für Geschichte von Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft Südwestfalens, edited by Ernst von Oder. There was only one issue surviving of this particular Jahrbuch from 1897, and on pages 7 through 12, he describes the original hot air balloon excursion of the Elector and the possibility that Handel had actually composed the music for it. But there the matter rested, because there was only one copy of this particular edition of the Jahrbuch für Geschichte von Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft Südwestfalens, edited by Ernst von Oder. Only the 1897 version existed. However, in the 1950s, the German music historian, Professor Dr. Heinz Rüdiger von Schmallenberg-Hurtig, found this single surviving copy of the Jahrbuch für Geschichte von Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft Südwestfalens. And Professor Dr. Heinz Rüdiger von Schmallenberg-Hurtig went and did a lot of research in the archives in Hanover, and he came up with part of the original manuscript that led to him being able to reassemble the work from the existing pieces that Handel used later, because, as you know, Handel borrowed everything from everybody, including himself. And so Professor Dr. Heinz Rüdiger von Schmallenberg-Hurtig published his findings in the Monumenta Historia Handeliana, Volume 14, Number 2, Halband 3, Auflage, That's the third volume, and the something, I don't know, it's German, and this was published in Darmstadt in 1957. And there the matter would have rested, but for the recent discovery, the even more recent discovery of the original manuscript. Along with, by the way, the original manuscript for the water music wasn't uncovered until the 2000s. I mean, Handel manuscript things are all over the place, and they're still being discovered. And so it wasn't until the actual manuscript of the Luftmusik was uncovered that people gave Dr. Heinz Rüdiger von Schmaldenberg-Hurtig's discoveries the credibility that they deserved. Until then, nobody paid much attention to it because they couldn't find the original sources. But now, and I need to thank my colleague, Herr Dr. Sören Meyer-Eller of München, for providing me some of the original citations, because they're extremely hard to come by still. But they are discussed in the Revisionsbericht in the new critical edition, published as part of the Halle Handel Ausgabe, which I received, and I was just terribly honored that the Halle Handel Ausgabe chose Tinnitus Classics and our very own Musica Urethra Baroque Ensemble to perform the world premiere of Handel's Luftmusik. Now, the entire work consists of about 27 individual movements, and they're the usual dance things. You know that kind of stuff. But I am going to play for you the entire, totally complete first performance of the overture of the Aire Musicke, and this is just unbelievably exciting. So without further ado, let me play for you the Aire Musicke overture performed by the Musica Urethra Baroque Ensemble on Tinnitus Classics. Here it is. stunning. And if you listen carefully, I'm sure you understand why this is such a major musicological discovery. It's not just for the music that Handel reused in his later works, but it's also for the anticipations of music by later composers. Handel is such an amazing source for that reason, because, he borrowed from himself, from everybody, and from the general musical vocabulary of the time. There was in this period, in the Baroque era particularly, a well-known vocabulary of musical motives and gestures and imagery that all the composers of the day used. But Handel was sort of unique in that his borrowings, such as they were completely extraordinary. He was almost like Mahler. He was like, music must be the world. It must embrace everything. He took material from everywhere. These materials originated in the Baroque era, possibly in and around the region of Hanover, and they are only to be found in Handel's Aire Musicke, in his Luftmusik. So I think that this performance, particularly this recording and this discovery, the publication, of course, of a critical edition of the score by the Halle Handel Ausgabe, has the opportunity to really change everything that we know about musical history and the order in which this stuff was written and the common practice of the period and German music generally. It's an astonishing, marvelous discovery. And the fascinating thing about it is that we now have clues as to where we might find the fourth member of this tetralogy, the Aire Musicke, the earth music. Until now, the only thing that has survived is the incredibly famous Mud Minuet. But aside from the Mud Minuet, the earth music is nowhere to be found. But I have a feeling that in the not too distant future, the Halle Handel Ausgabe and the fabulous crew of musicologists who are working on these scores and on discovering the origins of Handel's work and his original manuscripts may come up with more than just the Mud Minuet. And you can be sure that when they do, Tinnitus Classics and the Musica Urethra Baroque Ensemble will be available to make sure that you guys have the first opportunity to hear it. So thank you so much for joining me for this absolutely earth-shattering discovery of Handel's Luftmusik, his Aire Musicke. Keep on listening, folks. Take care.